Mayor.
Councilmember Waring is not in the chamber as of yet.
And Councilmember Brady is joining us now.
Aye. Councilmember Brady, you look mighty spiffy with that bow tie on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's new.
It's a different look.
I'm trying. I discovered that I have a tendency to spill coffee in the mornings. And so it's ruined enough ties that I'm like, I can at least OxyClean a shirt, as opposed to, so that's hence the bow tie. It's a little higher.
Coffee and soup.
Looks very nice.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Distinguished.
And Mr. Chairman, I think everyone is on the line. We're just missing one council member.
And who's that?
Councilmember Waring.
Okay. The March 9th, 2021 Committee on Ways and Means is now called to order. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Del Chapo.
Here.
Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Here.
Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seekings.
Here.
Councilmember Shade.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Appel.
Here.
Councilwoman Jackson.
Here.
Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here.
Thank you. I'll call on Councilmember Appel for our invocation. Councilman Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've used up my moments of silence, so I'm going to sing a Hebrew prayer for healing. It's called the Mishaberach. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
And refuah shalema is a Hebrew phrase meaning complete healing. So I think we could all use a little bit of that these days. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councilmember. Do I hear a motion regarding the February 23rd, 2020?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Bids and purchases?
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mayor Tecklenburg.
I did want to share that I believe I recall what Amy Wharton shared with me, that the rate for this agreement is 0.6%, less than 1%. So it's a incredibly good interest rate. It's almost just like using somebody else's money. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4, budget, finance, revenue, Collections.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion regarding item 4? If not, all say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Item number 5, budget finance revenue.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion regarding item 5? If not, all in favor say aye.
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think I've shared this before, but I think it warrants sharing again, is our management of this program brings a great benefit to a number of nonprofit agencies in Charleston, in addition to a number of our own city departments. It's like a bonus of getting these young, energetic citizens ready to go to work. And of course, the VISTA program is mostly picking up the tab. So it's just a terrific bonus, a benefit for our community and our different organizations that receive one of these VISTA employees. We can go down the list sometime if you like, but it's just a terrific program. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. Do I hear a motion regarding item 6?
I move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Item number 7.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on item number 7? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Item 8, stormwater management.
Move
I'll
for
move for
approval.
approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on item 8? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 9.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor of item number 9 say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
The opposed? The ayes have it. Item 10, fire department approval to submit.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on item 10? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Item 11,
Move for approval.
Second.
moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to kind of touch on number 11 just quickly. I spoke with our Public Services Division, and we talked about just not only is this grant going to do great things for getting more trucks into our fleet, but it's also going to save us a considerable amount of money over the coming years by this diesel emission reduction is going to save us a lot of money in diesel, and it's also better for the environment. So not only do we have a cost savings here, and we're getting help from this grant, those are all great things, but we're also doing a good job of protecting the environment. So I just wanted to make sure we put that out there, that there's a lot of really positive things that are coming out of this grant. And we all know that we need to continue to build up our fleet, especially in garbage collection, because we've got a large portion of the city that doesn't get picked up by the city. So it's always good when we can add more trucks and improve our fleet, because our garbage collection is second to none in this area, and they do a fantastic job. They run circles around everybody else, and they constantly are meeting every single one of our needs. Whenever we need something, we call Matt out top, he jumps. So I'm really, really proud that we got this grant, and I think this is a really good, valuable spending of our money. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Any further discussion on item 11? It's been first and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Got you. Item number 12.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? If not,
Yes, sir, I do.
yes, I'm sorry, Harry. Councilman.
Yes, sir, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we took this up at Public Works and it'll be in our committee report as well. But I just want to make sure everybody on council got an opportunity to check out this letter. And, you know, I'm sure we have Mr. Wilbert on the call. Maybe he can explain this letter because there is some language in there that hints at us potentially spending up to $3 million. Is it three? It's 3 million, I think, total for a study. 1.5 coming from the federal government, the Army Corps, and then another 1.5 match from the city. So I just want everybody to be aware that they're down the road. It may not be today, but there will be some cost to this down the road, and we need to look at how we're going to afford that. And I also would love to find out exactly how this money is going to be spent, whether or not we're going to be looking at all of these areas that we've already spent a lot of money studying. I get worried that we're spending so much money studying, having all these different companies come out and study the same areas. It ends up, we have a lot of conflicting approaches, and, you know, I just don't know how effective this is going to be. So I was hoping we could get some more clarification on that.
Is Mr. Wilbert on the phone?
You muted, Mark. We can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Mark. Mark?
Okay, can you hear me now, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Okay, yep. So I think I can address all those questions that Councilmember Griffin had. So this is a feasibility study, and the purpose of a feasibility study is for the federal government to determine if there is federal interest in them spending money to do construction projects. In this case, it would be projects to alleviate flooding throughout the city of Charleston. To Councilmember Griffin's specific point about all of the existing studies, those studies would actually help this study in that they would not have to restudy those areas. They would simply look at them as a potential area that they could then perhaps do construction projects in. So yes, there will be some studying that will be done in those areas that have not been studied, but the studies that are there would certainly be used, just like in the study that we're doing now for the storm surge risk study. None of those studies are thrown away or discarded. They are certainly used, and it helps make the project go a little further. But one thing I just want to be clear is that the scope and scale of this study is still to be determined. We intentionally left it very broad. The authorization in the federal authorization bill was very broad. We wrote the letter very broad. The Army Corps of Engineers understands that. They've asked it to be broad. They're going to work it up through their chain of command, and they will come back with us, and together we'll have a little more scoping to do. But the intent of this is to look for ways that the federal government can determine federal interest and therefore perhaps come to the city and be able to cost share future construction projects to help with our flooding at a cost share amount of 65 to 35%.
Thank you. Mark, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I know that the Army Corps of Engineers has a division which specifically looks at natural solutions to flooding issues. I do know that as a part of the first 3x3, we are sort of looking at natural solutions for certain parts of the peninsula, more specifically Wagner Terrace. Are we going to look further at other areas where natural solutions may be appropriate as opposed to construction of a wall or barrier of such?
Are you talking for this study or the one that's currently ongoing?
Well, actually for both. I know for the one that's ongoing, we're looking at natural solutions.
Right. The one that's ongoing, and we'll get into this more and more as the committee gets going and we brief out on that. It's difficult for natural solutions to, by themselves, stop storm surge of any considerable size, just by their nature. but they can maybe be used as an adjunct to some type of a other measure. In this particular study, though, I think there's a lot more opportunity for natural solutions to be the solution, because we're looking not only at storm surge, we're looking at all types of flooding throughout the city of Charleston. And then in those types of flooding, there is more opportunity for natural type solutions to be effective.
Did we consider such solutions as opposed to a wall, particularly along Lockwood, where if we were to raise Lockwood, we can make Brittle Bank Park sort of a catch basin during storm surges or flooding. And as they do in the Netherlands, once the water is gone, it returns back to a park. Did we ever consider anything like that along Lockwood and Brittle Bank Park sort of being a retaining area?
We did, and it's still not ruled out. It's certainly on the table, something to look at further in PED phase.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Any
Mr.
more? Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
I
Yeah.
think council members Shea, Jackson, and Seekings have their hands up.
and can we do it in that order? Because I don't have my full screen. Thanks, Council. Councilwoman Jackson?
yes, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate, I'm not on the Public Works Committee, but I did watch your discussion of this topic yesterday. And I appreciate Mr. Wilbert's responses to Councilmember Griffin. My understanding is that just like the current storm surge study for the seawall, that we're not committing to spending money. There'll be lots of off ramps before we would get to that place. If it is a feasibility study, as opposed to the study that is currently being paid 100% by the Army Corps, once we have the scope, we will have to commit to saying, yes, it's worth going forward on the study side of things. But I think my takeaway about this is based on all of the comments that we were contributing to the work session discussion a few weeks ago, after we listened to the Army Corps and we listened to Wagner and Ball. And my takeaway from that session as a consensus among council was that we can't really make decisions about the wall until we have a more holistic plan for managing water all over our city. And so I think the fact that we can get, part of that paid for from a group of engineers that we trust and have a good working relationship, certainly we should authorize this next step of allowing the scope to be developed and then decide if we want to pay for it. So I intend to vote yes for number 12.
Seekings?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, specifically, I mean, it's great if this is a precursor to getting federal money to do some projects, but as a practical matter, in terms of studying the areas, the two in the city, we've pretty much done it. I'm sitting here sort of looking at a map, trying to think about where we actually haven't done a study of some sort or another. Johns Island, James Island, Church Creek, the entire peninsula. We know what's going on out there, absent our groundwater studies. I mean, I don't see that this is gonna be a $3 or $4 million project because we've done so much of the study already. We know what we've got.
I think that a lot of that is true. I think this process that the Army Corps uses before they commit federal money is to go through this process. Again, I don't think they would restudy the areas, but they would propose solutions to the challenges that those areas have and recommend construction projects to fix those areas. So that would be more of the intent, to come up with construction projects and see if those construction projects have a significant cost benefit ratio to determine federal interest where we could then spend federal dollars.
Well, might I just humbly suggest that when we send along, if this passes, our assent to them thinking about it, bundle up every single study that we've already done and send that along with it so that they have it in front of them as they think about all the challenges that we've got here. Don't duplicate a bunch of efforts, because in the end, really what we need is action, not studies. We got to get going. So if this slows things down, that speeds things up, that's not the greatest result in the world.
Was it Councilman Shea? You had your hand up?
I had my hand up, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
sir. Council.
Yes, Councilman Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mark, just to follow back up on what Councilmember Seekings left off on, as he mentioned, this is a precursor to getting the ball rolling. And we're not committing ourselves, we're not committing the city to spending any money at this point. And we can pull the plug on this if we so desire. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, so the way I read it is this is a letter of interest that we're sending to them. It's very, very broad. I would be shocked, honestly, if they came back and said, we're going to study the entire city of Charleston and propose construction projects for the entire city. But because of the way the authorization was written, that's the way we had to follow up the letter of interest. What we want to be able to determine, or what we want to give them the opportunity to work with us and determine areas that they're interested in studying, and that they believe there could be a cost benefit ratio that would be significant enough for them to invest federal money. Once we get that answer back through working back and forth with them, then I think we would have the opportunity again to say, yeah, we're going to move forward to commit or not. We're not committing any money with this. The letter's very clear on that.
This is just one of the legs we have to move on with, a rung in the ladder, so to speak, in order for this to proceed. That's all we're doing right now. If we don't send this letter out, we can't get off of first base.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and Mark, just in response to Councilman Seekings, I would assume that anyone conducting a study would take existing studies into account before they even start their process.
Mr. Chairman, I can assure you from working with them on the last study, that's the first step and the first thing that they ask for is all the existing studies in the area, any blueprints we have, any GIS layers that pertain to the area. It's information gathering phase lasts, on the last study, it lasted almost a full year.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman.
Did I hear someone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mayor Heckenberg.
So I just wanted to share, I view this, y'all, as a real opportunity for us to, as Councilmember Jackson mentioned, fulfill that vision of a holistic approach to flooding for our whole city. And it doesn't mean we're waiting for this to occur. I mean, y'all know we got the 5 strategies. We're pursuing those things. We got so many projects that we're proud of that Mr. Fountain and our stormwater department are pursuing. Yesterday, we reviewed a bunch of small projects. I mean, none of that is going to stop, but this allows us the, I think, incredible opportunity. We know we got to still have future projects to further address flooding in various parts of our city. And even if this puts us on the path where the federal government even helps us on a portion of those, that's money we don't have now. It just makes good sense to try to continue to partner with them and bring them into the fold of our ongoing efforts over time. It could mean some more federal assistance that I think we would all welcome if it falls right into other future projects that we need for our city. And this is just a stepping stone to get us in that direction. So I hope you'll support this. It's really a great opportunity in my view. Thanks.
And Mr. Mayor, if I'm hearing you correctly, this is the way we get to a water plan for citywide.
Absolutely. This is all part of that equation.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Councilman
Chairman.
Griffin has his hand up.
Councilman Griffin?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, so basically, I just want to piggyback quickly on what the mayor has said and also Councilmember Seekings. I don't think any of us are hesitant about the fact that we could get some federal money from this project. I think the bigger question is how much is it going to cost on our end? Just like we're looking at a potential $500 million buy-in on the current study that we're doing. And we haven't really got into in-depth discussion about how we're going to raise that money, how we're going to get to that number. And so I think more than anything, what scares me is that we're going to waste a lot of time going through this process, maybe half-heartedly looking at raising the money. But, you know, just like this study that we're going through right now, the 3x3, $500 million. I mean, we're talking about a project that's bigger than 526. And we haven't even talked about putting it on a referendum or anything yet. I feel like something like that needs to be headed down that path. And so what scares me is that we're just appeasing the Army Corps of Engineers, saying we're interested, but we're not actually taking the steps necessary to, we're going to come up with this exuberant price tag on the first project. And now we're going to tell them that we're going to start looking at a second project. And we have no idea how we're even going to fund the first. So, I mean, if this is like a smaller scale, Mark, it seemed to me like you might have some more information about where they're potentially looking at. You said that maybe that it's the letter's got to be broad, but you would be surprised if it was a broad thing. Does that mean that you have maybe some information that they may be looking at a specific area?
No, we've not, Councilmember, we've not had those discussions.
Because if we're talking about another $1 billion project, I feel like we're just wasting our time here.
Yeah, I think, and I don't do to you. We have not had those discussions at all to any particular areas. Okay. Again, it goes to the federal cost benefit. One of the things that we did, in fact, put in the letter, and certainly in the first paragraph there, speaks exactly to your concern. And that is that the city is comprised of distinct areas of special concern that could be treated individually and could be severed from one another as a project develops. So the goal there in that particular language was, can we break these up and do some now? And when I say now, probably 6 or 7 years from now. And then, you know, one's maybe 9, 10 years after that. So it's intentionally written that way, that this is not a broad, grandiose solution. And even if it is, we know the city is severable. We know that we don't have to do a project that encompasses James, Johns Island, and the peninsula all at the same time. We can break those into separate areas. If we go out to West Ashley to do something, we can do that, and it doesn't impact what's happening on the peninsula.
Well, and then I'll support, yesterday I voted no, Mr. Chairman. I just want to explain that I voted no yesterday because I wanted some more information, but I'm going to vote yes today because I would like to find out where the Army Corps is headed and what they're looking at and what sort of scale this project is. I have a lot of questions, and hopefully with this letter of just interest, we'll get some more specifics as to where they're looking and what kind of ideas they have and what sort of price tag it's going to be. Because people are going to want to know how much it's going to cost.
Councilmember, I can assure you that the study is no more than $1.5 million. These are $3 million studies. That's what they're, unless it goes over. And then that would, if the study were to go over, just like the one that we're currently on, of course, that's being funded 100% by the federal government. If it were to go over, that would have to be negotiated between us and them at the 3-year mark.
Any further discussion or questions of Mark? Did I get a first and a second on number 12?
I
Yes.
did, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Councilmember Shade, seconded by Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, I think Councilmember Waring's trying to get your attention.
Okay, Councilman Waring.
Councilman Waring, do you want to use my computer?
Can you? All right,
Yeah.
good. I appreciate all the conversation that was said. I also appreciate what the mayor had to say, Mr. Wolpert, on yesterday and today, Councilman Seekings, as well as Councilman Griffin. As we move along with these studies, we've known about the Army Corps of Engineers project into last year, but the progress that we've made on how we're going to come up with our match, we really, really, really need to start making some progress on that, because it would be unfair, to lead the Army Corps of Engineers and anybody else along, and we hadn't rolled up our sleeves to say, City of Charleston, where is our money coming from? We have not put any effort on that. We talk about it during a meeting every now and then in between the meetings, it's over with. So I'm gonna vote for this, but I believe before we get to the jumping off point, kind of like what Council Lady Jackson said, there are a couple of, I'm just paraphrasing, but there are a couple of points. If we want to hit the off ramp, we could, but it would be disingenuous if we don't earnestly get to the point of saying, where's our money going to come from? Hopefully the Fed does come through. But where does our money come through? And that's not going to be something that we're going to be able to make a decision on. I don't think between the 13 of us, we're going to need a collective to come up with those kind of monies. I mean, Councilman Griffith says 500 million. I thought ours was north of 600 million. That's approximately 3 times our annual budget. So we've got to think collectively in a broad way. We have this conversation, but then I don't see the action steps on the how-tos of getting dollars to do it. So I would hope on the other side of this vote, in the days and weeks ahead, we begin to put together an honest financial plan, how we're going to come up with the money to do this. Does this community have the ability to do it? Without a doubt. But it has to be concise, something understandable for the people at large to understand and comprehend. But right now, we know we're close to having that message, much more the methodology about getting the finances of this done. So I think that's about the third or fourth time between committee meetings and on now council meetings, Ways and Means meeting, I've talked about a broad approach to try to generate the money to do this. If we don't take the action steps, then shame on us.
Thank you for all of your comments. Are you ready for the question?
We are.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Chairman Shea.
Yes, sir. The Committee on Real Estate met yesterday afternoon. Several items on our agenda. The first item may sound familiar to all of you, which we just took this up about a month ago. This regards the surface lot on Haggard and Fishburne Street, over 1,100 surface parking lots. The state came back to us because there were some T's that we did not cross and I's that needed to be dotted, but there was no other major changes to this lease with NUSC that we had already not approved. I don't see Peter Roscoe on our call, but there were just 3 minor issues that we needed to address to get this done. So we moved it. Item A be approved. Item B regarded a agreement with Palmetto Railways in which the city was going to get $11.5 million for the sale of some, this is part of that railroad model area. This was also discussed at the Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting preceded us yesterday. Chip McQueenie is on the phone. Of the 11.5 million, if we accept this deal, about 5 million of it will have to go to mediation of this area, and then the other money would be used for helping us probably relocate Milford Street property. So Chip, with that sort of being teed up for you, would you mind picking up from that point and giving us more explanation on this proposal for this MOU?
Yes, sir. I'm happy to. And as Councilmember Shade mentioned, there are still a lot of moving parts. Let me share. Jennifer, can I share my screen?
Yes, hold on one moment. Let me stop my share. Okay, you should be good to go.
Okay. I'll make sure I have the right thing. All right, here we go. This is probably the best map to use, but this is, so the red area is the new quote southern access route, rail access to the Navy base intermodal facility. The city owns what's known as the WR Grace site, which is shown highlighted here. We've known for a long time that Palmetto Railways needs to acquire a portion of our property. I think the latest, basically what I've got is up to 2.53 acres at this point. They also, anyway, going back to the beginning, we've also been negotiating sort of a list of mitigation improvements for either the city to make with Palmetto Railways dollars, or Palmetto Railways to make in association with the Department of Transportation and the Department of Commerce. We were stuck for really a couple of years at somewhere around $5 million with a list of mitigation improvements, and the idea that we'd work out the sale of the WR Grace site, or a portion of it, excuse me, at a later date. More recently, the Ports Authority has gotten involved. They are, the General Assembly is actually considering a economic development bond for like $550 million for the intermodal project that's pending, and subject to the passage of that, what's currently a joint resolution that's been referred to their Committee on Ways and Means. They've offered us $11.5 million for, I'm describing it as up to 2.53 acres of the WR Grace site, because they don't know exactly what the outline is going to be, and that's going to be the maximum. And 4.9 million roughly would have to go to mitigation impacts, meaning transportation mitigation impacts. The map in front of you is sort of a list of, or outlined, I can zoom out, some proposed mitigation projects we had in mind. I think this was in 2017. Our list, which involved a viaduct crossing over Meeting Street Road, was somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 million. The Palmetto Railways had come back with their own mitigation study and wanted to, that's where I think they had $4.2 million worth of projects listed. We would get the $11.5 million. We have to use 5 for transportation or related mitigation in this area from the southern access route. The other 6.5 million we would have to use for one of 2 purposes, that being mitigation improvements or replacement facilities for what was to be built on the WR Grace site, which was public works facility, public service facility, I think Department of Transport, TNT, new facilities, fleet, storage for the police, and fire training facilities potentially. So that has been their offer, and again, it's subject to the bond. As far as what mitigation projects we would implement, we have about as much flexibility as we can have. We're not locked into any of the projects listed here, but we would have to spend $5 million on mitigation projects related to the area, and the balance on mitigation projects related to this area, and or the purchase of land, the construction, the design of replacement facilities that were supposed to go on the WR Grace site.
And Mr. McQueenie, I think one of the comments you made yesterday that this is a number they've given us, and as far as negotiating and trying to get more money, we may lose that on the table. Is that accurate?
Yeah, this is not a negotiation. I'm not, yeah. This is, we're either going to get this or we can say no, and we'll deal with those consequences, which, that's y'all's policy call to make. We have older appraisals of the property. I don't think we have a relatively recent appraisal, and that did come up at real estate. And I can order that. I think they said it's been a 6 to 8 week turnaround, so we'll hold it up. The reason I'm kind of trying to get this done is I would prefer to have this in place signed by both parties before that bond is passed by the General Assembly, so that both parties are sort of guaranteed that this is how it's going to work once that bond goes. So that's really the hurry I feel like on my end. But anyway, that's pretty much everything. I've been very blunt, but that's pretty much everything I know at this point.
And we certainly do appreciate your candor. And Mr. Chairman, I know that Councilmember Seekings and our Director of Traffic and Transportation is available. This, as I said, brought to their attention as well. But that's sort of where we are with this item on real estate. I can move on to the other items as well. Item C is an ordinance to authorize the mayor to execute a third amendment to the memorandum regarding some property on Hanover Street for affordable housing. Is Gianna available?
Gianna?
Gianna? Yes, yes.
Sorry, trying to unmute and put the camera on as well. Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilmember Shaheed and Councilmember Gregory. So what is before what we presented to real estate yesterday and what is before council today is the authorization for a third amendment to an MOU between the city and the Episcopal Diocese Choteau, or Community Housing Development Organization. Many of you who've been on council for a while recall this organization. Basically, this is finalizing our efforts with the Episcopal Diocese Choteau, and this literally would do two things. It would return 83 Hanover Street to the city, which we've already begun development on and have a design for. And then it would allow the ED Choteau to utilize approximately $161,170,000 toward the construction of 2 additional homes on Humphreys Court. This organization's efforts have been undertaken in the Cannonboro, Elliottboro community. And so we want them to continue that. And in fact, once they're done there, that would finalize the efforts that they've undertaken to date with the city of Charleston. So I ask for your continued approval of this item.
Thank you, Gianna. Item D, Mr. Chairman, dealt with these ongoing litigation with Crown Castles. This dealt with the erection or the proposed erection of cell phone black power poles. There's Judge Norton, the United States District Judge Norton, granted our relief on prohibiting them or forcing them to install 5 different of these poles in locations throughout the city. So what Steve Brown, our outside counsel, gave us a very thorough explanation and description of this litigation. They were able to identify 3 different poles that the city owns, and we could use those utility poles to accommodate Crown Castle's need for the erection of for these towers instead. So we discussed giving them authorization to proceed with this. I don't think Steve is on the line. Maybe Susan Hodina can add anything that I'm missing on that. That was a very quick Reader's Digest description of what we talked about at length yesterday about these black, hideous-looking poles. One of them was positioned to be right at the corner of the 4 corners of law, right across the street from City Hall. The other was going to be positioned further down Broad Street near Logan Street. So these were things that we were trying to avoid having installed and literally sticking out like a big old sore thumb at various locations throughout the peninsula. And through their efforts, we've been able to provide for an alternative to these poles using what we have in our inventory, with our stockpile, so to speak, on that. So Susan, if I missed anything, I kind of glossed over that, but I think that's the gist of what we're looking for, to permission to proceed with that offer.
That's correct. We would like the authorization for the mayor to execute the non-exclusive poll agreement that's in your agenda package, which would authorize Crown Castle to place their equipment on city-owned poles. And the benefit of this is they would not be installing their own new poles, which are very unattractive near these poles. So we strongly encourage and hope that council will authorize us to go forward with this pole agreement. Thank you.
Item E, Mr. Chairman, was a request for a memorandum of understanding between Federal Health and the city to have a temporary co-location at 265 Fishburne Street. And finally, for consideration were the annexations of two pieces of property. Council member Appel has been on his bicycle pedaling very fast and hardly to get more people in his district on Golfview, which is right off the 10th hole of the Muni. And then Councilmember Sackman's district, which is sort of bordered with my district and Councilmember Waring's district, 114 Magnolia. Items A through F are all recommended for approval and submission to this committee. The recommendation that we approve all of those items, Mr. Chairman.
Is that a motion?
So that is a motion, yes, sir.
Do I hear a
Second.
second?
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any
Mr.
discussion?
McQueenie had his hand up, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. If I can, just real quick, I apologize. We do have an appraisal of the property from March of 2019, and I did not realize that. I don't think I was involved at that point that I just got from Matt Froelich. I can provide that to the real estate committee meeting before this is first reading of the ordinance, but it does not concern me, that appraisal, based on what we'd be getting under this agreement. I'll just put it that way, but I don't want to announce it to the general public because it's privileged. So,
Thank you.
but I will provide it. I'll go back to real estate next month and provide everybody a copy between now and then.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the real estate report? If not, all in favor of approval as submitted, say aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it. Council.
And that was it.
I
That's
think,
it, Mr. Chairman.
yes. Is there anything else to be brought before this committee? If not, this meeting's adjourned.
We'll see you in about 2 minutes at City Council.
Okay.
Great.
Comments, Mayor?